I don't take sides in the whole Laquan McDonald killing. Apparently, it's not clear to his family whether or not this is racial, and you know what our policy is regarding that. I do think it important, however, to note things that show how white supremacy works when it's busy doing its dirt. The last couple days or so, the white media has been running pieces from Los Angeles to New York saying that the Chicago authorities need to prepare for whatever the verdict in the Jason Van Dyke trial may be. Now, the trial hasn't even begun yet. In fact, they're still in the discovery phase. They're still trying to petition the judge for what kind of evidence they want in. The judge has ridiculously decided that he's going to allow the murderer, Jason Van Dyke's defense team, to enter in an animated version of the murder of Laquan McDonald. Because apparently the videotape's not good enough. We need to have an animated version of it. And I'm sure the defense team has looked at it and decided that they want to make certain that the animation shows from different angles the bullets being entered into Laquan McDonald's body while he was on the ground. I'm sure that's what it's about. The judge is clearly trying to stack the deck in favor of the defense, and the biggest evidence of this is the fact that the judge is shrouding all these proceedings in total secrecy. Now, you know how that is. Same thing that happened with Daniel Pantaleo in New York, same thing that happened with Bob McCullough in Ferguson. That's how these guys like to operate. They want to, since they know that they can't do the grand jury dodge anymore, where they can't try to bury the charges at the grand jury. So what they're doing now is they're basically saying, we're going to basically throw a giant wall up between the public and the court, and we're going to have it where everything takes place in total secrecy. And that's not so that they can achieve justice. It's so that hopefully they can make it where the judge won't have to pay any sort of price when it comes time to run for re-election. So the DA won't have to pay a price. Hopefully, if no one sees what they've done, then hopefully nobody gets in trouble. Yeah, it's the white supremacist way. But the media is already saying, we hope that they've got plans in place for how they're going to deal with the verdict. Now, you know full well that the enforcement and propaganda arms of white supremacy operate hand in hand. So if the white media, before the trial has even begun, is already saying, wonder if the authorities are going to be able to deal with the aftermath of the verdict. Are they ready with crowd control? Yeah, they're already telegraphing that the fix is in. Of course, the so-called authorities already know what the verdict is going to be before the trial begins. The prosecution and the defense are both working together, and the judge is sitting here acting as traffic control for this railroading. They're going to make sure that Laquan McDonald is railroaded into his grave without the possibility that his murderer is going to face justice. And while I'm not too broken up about it, it's just a matter of you see what these guys have been reduced to. When it comes to its foot soldiers, white supremacy uses show trials, stage managed by the so-called authorities in order to mollify the public. That's what this is about. People have already moved on from Chicago. Unless you live in the Chicago area, you're not really, in fact, you probably don't even know that it's been years since Laquan McDonald was murdered, a couple of years since Anita Alvarez got bounced out of office because of her covering up of the murder, and Jason Van Dyke hasn't even gone on trial yet. They haven't taken all this time because they want to make sure they get it right. They've taken all this time because they want to make sure that the public have forgotten about it. And hopefully this issue will die a quiet death with the judge making sure that nobody even knows what's gone on in the courtroom. Now, why do you think that is? You can see the scam a mile away. They've already engineered a hung jury or an acquittal by front-loading the jury with white supremacists and non-white bootlicks. The judge is only going to allow evidence that's going to help the defense, but that doesn't matter because the prosecution's not trying to achieve a verdict of guilty. What they're there for is to make sure that basically all procedural grounds are covered so that they can say, oh, well, you know, it was the jury you see. It was the jury you see. And on the off chance that the murderer or the rapist, in the case of Daniel Holtzclaw, does get convicted, then the white media is very quickly going to bury that so that it fades from the headlines as quickly as possible. The white media is only too eager to move on after a white supremacist with a badge happens to get convicted. The white media is like, oh, we need to move on. We need to move on. However, when it's an outcome that the white media doesn't like the OJ verdict, the white media ain't moving on from nothing. They're going to keep reporting on it regardless. The message with the aftermath of the OJ verdict was clear. Until this nigger gets put in prison, all other white business has to stop. You know, it reminds me of what Tom Clancy said, the media can't tell people what to think, but it can tell people what to think about. It can at least push what the important issue of the day is. And they made sure that the focus was on O.J. Simpson for 2 decades until they finally got him on something. Meanwhile, when it comes to Jason Van Dyke, the white media is not deciding to give the blow-by-blow and the play-by-play. They're just not interested. But they were only too eager to make sure that they engraved into the white consciousness that O.J. Simpson was a victory for black people, and the white public cannot let that stand. And clearly they understood that to be the message. The white media conditions through repetition, and there's plenty of reason for that. Most people are simple-minded. That's just a reality. In truth, there is no such thing as making something stick or making it stick in the public mind. People are always becoming apathetic, bored easily, wanting to move on to something new or just something different. So the idea that if you teach a mass of people something that it's going to stay with them, that's largely a fallacy. That's largely a fraud that you are playing upon yourself. You have to keep reminding people so that they stay on the path. Well, the path that I want black people to stay on is the path to power. And one of the worst ways to guarantee that you never make it to your destination is to hold hands with your enemy. Dr. Claude Anderson is always talking about inappropriate behavior on the part of black people, and I can't think of a much worse example of that than black parents who give their children to the police for a photo op. I told you a couple of years back about how some mayonnaise monkeys in Alabama took advantage of a baby in the middle of a tragedy. Michelle Burton, one of the armed thugs terrorizing Birmingham, conspired with her fellow gang members to use a baby whose parents had just overdosed. No more than an hour earlier, their parents just died, body's not even cold yet, and use this baby for a picture. This at the height of the post-Ferguson protest. I also detailed how Burton's husband went on Facebook that very night and said that he wanted to make the picture of her with this baby that she essentially had in her clutches go viral because, as he saw it, the police needed some good PR. Now, if you saw the video, which is also viewable on my other channel, that animal, I'm talking about Burton's husband in this case, not her, he didn't give so much as one word of sympathy, either regarding the baby whose parents had died or regarding the public. Now, you're looking at a baby here whose one of whose parents had just died, and the other parent clinging to life in a hospital, assuming the police actually took the mother to the hospital at all, and yet the only thing that this scumbag could talk about was, well, the police are getting a bad rap, and people need to appreciate the police. They need to appreciate the police and be thankful for the cops. And we can use this picture to sell that. He barely mentioned the fact that one of the baby's parents had died. And when you look at the replies on his Facebook page, you see that this bastard had plenty of sociopathic company. And as I also explained, you wouldn't be surprised to learn that this Burton woman's husband had some media people as his friends on Facebook. As I keep telling you, the enforcement and propaganda arms of white supremacy work hand in hand. Some local Alabama TV and internet reporters assured Burton's husband that they were going to spread the word about how awesome the cops are. I tracked on my video essay regarding this abomination how that lie was proliferated to the rest of the white media, eventually going international. However, what got far less attention in this fiasco was the outrage from the baby's relatives, who pointed out that the police were clearly taking advantage of a tragedy for a pathetic PR stunt, exploiting a baby one of whose parents died just so the cops could engineer and manufacture some good headlines for themselves. And all the white media pieces were just about how awesome this white woman was. Nobody talking about the tragedy that happened to this child. or the child's other siblings, because there were other children, not just this one, just about how great the cops are. They were just being blatant. It wasn't just one white media outlet. It was dozens of them. More than dozens. Just every white media outlet that covered this story, that picked it up and ran with this fraud, they were just going on and on about how great the cops are, not a word about the child. They didn't give a damn about the child. They wanted to make it clear, this ain't about the kid. This is about how great the police are. And you folks need to stop protesting the police and stop saying that the police are a bunch of out-of-control killers. The white media did interview after interview with Trailer Trash Tracy, Michelle Burton, but they didn't do any interviews with the relatives of that baby. No interviews with them at all. Yeah, they had their fraudulent narrative and they didn't want the truth to spoil it. When these white supremacists begin putting their filthy paws on black babies, they do it to send a message that they can do anything to black people that they want to, that even the most innocent means nothing to them. This was an unforgivable crime that cried out for justice. And what is equally vile is that while the thugs in blue are waging a race war against us, you have black parents openly putting their kids into photos with the thugs in blue. Now, we've all heard or read about the article written by a black man relating how he has to have the talk with his son about how the police are a murderous gang of white thugs killing black people any chance they get. Now, that went viral and with good reason, but the white media didn't want that to catch on or to spread. This is the white media doing counter-programming. A narrative that they didn't want to take hold catches on, so they have to flood the media with a counter-narrative. These Negroes say the police are murdering them. Well, we have some photos of some smiling Negroes making nice with the police, so it can't be as bad as all that. Muddy the waters. If you can't disprove that the police are out of control, well, at least try to find a way to throw some doubt in there. Try to find a way to say that, well, all things being equal, the white media's job is to maintain the status quo. And the public questioning the legitimacy of the enforcement arm of white supremacy, that is not in the white media's interest, because it's not in white supremacy's interests. They want people to have doubts about whether or not the police really are a roving gang murdering black people any chance they get. You let one side say that the police are racist, then you present some cherry-picked, bought and paid for, engineered puff piece for the cops, saying that black people want to be the police's friends, and then you leave the public to split the difference. Under those circumstances, what it means is the status quo will be maintained. No change takes place. They portray both sides as if both sides have a point, when the truth of the matter is, in practically every argument, only one side has a point. The other side just has their opinion. They've got their uninformed opinion, their own conceits, but they don't have a point. The white media can't hide the murders that the police are committing because they're so numerous and so blatant, but they don't have to. The police's targeted killings of black people is one of the worst kept secrets on earth. What the white media's objective is for people to stop protesting the police. You ain't gotta like what the police do, but you can't oppose them. And as was pointed out with Michelle Burton, the police can't expect to get away with staging their own half-baked PR stunts, so they need some plumb-dumb Negroes to play along. And tragically, there's no shortage of black people who will risk their lives for some attention from the white supremacists. And worse, there's some black people who are so immoral, so sick, so depraved, that they will gladly hand their own children over to the very thugs who murder black teenagers like Laquan McDonald, who murder black preteens like Tamir Rice and Ayanna Jones, and the police even murder unborn babies like the unborn child of pregnant mother Charlena Lyles. Now I want you to take a look at this crap. This little bit of white splaining with a black dummy out front. This happened a couple of years ago in Fort Worth. I think it's a good starting place for the absolute unforgivable crime of using black children in order to be PR crash dummies for the enforcement arm of white supremacy.